It's Dwayne Huff of Band Leadership Seminars, Band Leadership Band Leadership Online. And in this video, I want to share with you, and I'm going to read it from the description here, how to help your students lead their peers without creating drama or confrontation. But before I jump in there, before I forget, if you're really serious about developing your leaders and building team amongst your band and starting it earlier than later so that you can have a strong team, community, and family and strong leaders by the end, by the beginning of marching band season, now's the time to start. Run over to bandleadershipseminars.com, and there'll be a lot of ways that I can help you do that if you'd like my help. But let me jump in here with this topic. For those of you who don't know me, for the past 7 years, I've traveled the country working with high school and college band programs, and my background is not as an educator like you. I respect everything you do. That's just not my background. But my background is basically I'm a unicorn in the marching band space, right? Rainbows and all that kind of stuff. And what I mean by that is that I'm a 9-time student leader and a 6-time drum major, which from what my understanding is, that's a very rare thing, right? Not many people have that background experience, but I'm not saying that to impress you. I'm not someone who necessarily did everything right. In fact, I did a lot of things wrong, but I had such a heart and a passion for what some of my mentors like Dr. Tim and George Parks that I get to work with one-on-one and in a group taught me about leadership. And even though I didn't get it right, I went on a journey after that 9 years of being a student leader, and I wanted to understand what would make it better for students, and what would make it better for you, the band director, so that you could teach your students how to be effective leaders. And so that's my background. And many times band directors reach out to me. I have a private Facebook group called Band Leadership Inner Circle. If you'd like access to that, look that up on Facebook and just request. There'll be 3 questions, and when you answer them, I'll admit you into the group. But that's a community that I created just for you guys to get answers from each other, and I answer some of the questions you have. And that's what this is, the spirit of this. So even if you're watching on the replay and you have a question about how to develop your leaders, please drop it in the comments. And if you get value from this, please share it with some colleagues. And if there's something in here you want to share with your students, feel free to take it and teach it. But band directors generally reach out to me because they have successful programs, small, medium, or large, and they're doing a good job with the music and the show and all the other aspects of band, but they get frustrated. That's the overriding emotion that I hear. They get frustrated with trying to adequately build the community, the team, and the family of the band, and develop their leaders simultaneously so that they lead their peers without causing drama or without causing conflict. And so one of the things that I share with them is this. And I wish I could say that I learned this from one of my mentors, Dr. Tim or George Parks or John Maxwell, but this came along when I went on that journey many years later, as I had a sales career for 14 years. And I experienced this in about year 7 of my sales career. And it's only recently in the last couple of years that I've started to use this in my live seminars and my online course to be able to help band directors develop their student leaders. And it's this. And I'll lay this out, and then I'll share a story with you, kind of how it worked out for me and what gave me the revelation to do this with students. Now, I'll be honest with you and say this is going to take some time and some attention, but it's very simple to do. It's not easy, but it's very simple. And I want to share with you how to do it so you can take this and do this with your student leaders. The new ones, the aspiring ones, the returning ones are the ones who are looking promising, and you want to be able to guide them in the right direction. So here's the process and the steps. I've made notes to myself. Let me just check myself to make sure I'm on track. And if I haven't said yet, or if I forget to say it later, go over to bandleadershipseminars.com. Tons of resources for you guys that can help you develop your leaders. But here it goes. I'll take you step by step through this. Number 1, I would pull your leaders or your aspiring leaders, or even leaders you're going to interview and audition for the coming season. I would pull them aside into a group, and you could take an hour. I would invite you to invest a little bit more time, or block out a little bit more time, or maybe you can break it into chunks. But the first thing I would do is I would facilitate a conversation, especially with the returning leaders or the past leaders. And I would say, okay, guys, as you were leading your peers during the marching band season, and even now, because we all know that leadership is a year-round thing, right? But when you're leading your peers and you look back, what were some of the more difficult times that you had? And ultimately, they're going to talk about times when they tried to lead their peers didn't want to follow, they pushed back, they got in their face, they created all this drama, confrontation and conflict happened. And then pull back and say, okay, guys, let's talk about that more specifically in depth. And let's talk about maybe some of the conversations that happened, some of the things that were said to you, some of the situations that arose, some of the things that caused the conflict and drama. And let's just really pull that apart. And then really get them to identify. People support what people help create, I always like to say. And so if you bring the kids into this creation process, they feel like they own it, that they're part of it, and they're more likely to be involved in finding the solution. And I would list out and say, okay, guys, so talk to me, remind me about some of the things, the nature of the conversation you would have with your peers. What did you ask them, or what did you say, and what did they say in response, right? And what I have found whenever I have shared this with students is all of a sudden they get very emotional and they say, well, Johnny, I was just trying to help, and Johnny got all in my face and called me names and tried to embarrass me. And they say, okay, well, let's back up here for a second. Let's build up to that. Where did this all start? And what you're going to find, is that they're going to identify situations and conversations that were frustrating. Hold on a second. Let me close this door. I got some noise going on in the background. My apologies. Anyway, so forgive me. Woo, squirrel. Anyway, so identify these conversations and even write them out on the board or on a piece of flip chart paper, and identify conversations that they had with their peers that maybe didn't go the way they planned or backfired on them. And reduce it down to a phrase, a sentence, a question, or a situation, right? And whenever you have those listed out in your mind as a band director, you're going to see a couple of things. You're going to be like, wow, that's where that went wrong. Here's why that happened the wrong way. And here's what I prefer they would have done. And here's what I want you to do. All right, guys, now that we look at this conversation, this is a collective conversation between all the peers here. Now, Johnny mentioned that this happened when he was trying to lead his peer and it all fell apart. Let's give Johnny some help and let's look at it in hindsight, because hindsight's 20/20. What's the best way to approach that? Where could that have gone better? How would you approach it next time? And again, it's not really singling out the student. It's just getting a collective conversation going around it. And then the next step, number 2, or number 1, number 1.5, number 2, is you as the band director facilitate a role play around that scenario. Now, this is where you get to jump in and offer your guidance, because you know what the outcome is that you're looking for. You know how they need to handle it. You know where it went wrong, but you want them to self-discover the answer rather than you just telling them. Because if they come up with it in their mind and they go, that's how I should have handled it, then they own it. If you tell them, they're like, oh, okay, that sounds good. Maybe next time, right? No, you want them to facilitate that. So offer a little guidance, offer a little suggestion, and then put yourself in the situation and say, okay, here's the way this is going to happen. I'm going to play the role of your peer who got in your face or who didn't want to follow you, and you are going to guide me through that conversation now that we've talked about how it should happen. Put yourself in that role and then role play that out with them. And then flip it around and put them in the other role. And you demonstrate how that should look, right? And you could do it one time and let it go, but I would encourage you to pull some time aside with your leaders and spend a couple of hours going through this and debriefing after you go through each scenario. What could I have done better? What would have been a better approach? Where did this go south? Here's the whole premise of this thing. I'll tell you where I learned this in a little bit, but here's the whole premise of the situation. If you can get them to identify the pitfalls that they're potentially going to fall into leading their peers, where confrontation is going to happen, where the conversation is going to go south, where their peers are going to push back, or some of the challenges they're going to face because they're peer-to-peer, and then you can help them think through it, talk through it, and practice it just like they would their instrument, just like they would in rehearsal. By the time they step into those situations, it's not going to catch them off guard. And the more you prepare them by rehearsing that situation, just like you do your music, just like you do your show, you've prepared them. So whether you come to see me live or bring me in your school live or see my online course or watch Dr. Tim or anybody else that's out there touring, and you get all the great wisdom and information that they're motivated about, take that stuff back into your band room and start rehearsing the response because, I mean, we spend so much time rehearsing music and rehearsing the show because we want perfection there, or we want the best it can possibly be. Why in the world would we not rehearse leadership conversations so that your students are prepared? They know what to do, what not to do. They've self-discovered many things, and they've had so much practice ahead of time that there really is no obstacle, no situation, no conversation that they're not handled and ready to prepare. Now, I say it's simple. It's going to take practice. And so maybe you don't have time to meet with them every single time, but you started out and you teach them how to have these conversations. And then maybe they, as a leadership team, get together and facilitate these conversations. Now, they're teenagers. There could be a lot of drama associated with that whole thing. So you may have to work with them a couple of times. And then it's like a section rehearsal, right? Set them off and say, okay, guys, here's the 3 scenarios you're going to role play. Go. At the end of it, pull them together, say, okay, guys, what went well? What do you feel like you could have done better? Where'd you get stuck? What's the best way to handle each of those situations? So let me make sure I got my notes in order. By the way, if you're serious about developing your leaders, your team, and growing your leaders from start to finish, and you'd like my help, run over to bandleadershipseminars.com. A lot of resources over there that I can help and serve you. But let me tell you a story real quick. That's what I was making sure I was on top. So step number 1, have your leaders identify potential tough conversations, either from past experience or what they're anticipating. Facilitate a role play to help them manage and deal with that conversation, and then debrief it and offer guidance to them so that they know how to handle it moving forward. And the more you can get them to self-discover, the less you're going to have to go behind them and manage it. So here's a story about where I learned all this. And if you have any questions about this, or if you're a band director watching this and you're like, hey, Dwayne, that's a great idea, or hey, Dwayne, that's a horrible idea. But you have some wisdom on helping your students navigate the potential dramatic and stressful and conflict moments and conversations that happen during rehearsals and in your band that you've seen, feel free to comment or drop suggestions here. If you have a question about this, drop it in the comments as well. And if you're getting benefit and value from this, make sure you like the page so that you know when I go live every time, but share this with a colleague. Or feel free to bring this to your students tomorrow, the next day, whatever the case might be. But here's a story. This is where I learned all this. For years, when I graduated college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I got my degree in music performance, and I wasn't going to move away to some big city where I could actually make a living as a working musician. And for some reason, I'll tell you the exact reason. In the state where I'm in Louisiana, they weren't paying very well for teachers back then. Derek, the video keeps buffering. So sorry, sir. I'm going to post the replay. Actually, when I get finished with this, it's going to upload. And so hopefully the buffering is on your end. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying hopefully the buffering is on your side. And so the replay should be there. I am so sorry for that. I'm not seeing it freeze on my side, so hopefully the replay will be complete. I experienced this the other day whenever I was in a class and the trainer, I asked them a question and they started to answer and it buffered. But whenever I watched the replay, it was intact. So hopefully that's the case. Derek, thanks for bringing that to my attention. I'm going to keep rolling and hopefully that will be there. Hope you're enjoying this. Thanks for letting me know. But the story is that I spent 7 years in sales. The first 6 years were dismal. I went through job after job after job after job. 7th year, I landed on my feet, started to level out. And then the 8th year, I got hired by a pharmaceutical company. They gave me 2 weeks at home for home study. I wasn't a science person. They gave me this deep science I had to study. And then they brought me into class. And for this class, the next 2 weeks of my life were spent a couple of days in product knowledge, but for the rest of the time, from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we would role play. Every potential situation that we were going to face with a doctor, we went into their office, overcoming objections, handling the conversation, answering questions, getting stumped by the trainer in front of video. So we had to watch it back and our peers got to evaluate and judge us. And it was painful. And I'm not saying you should take it to that extreme with your students. It was painful. But at the end of that 2 weeks, when I walked into the field and called on my first doctor, my second, my third, my fourth, there was nothing that I couldn't handle. They could not shake my tree. They could not rattle my cage. I was ready. And so I started working with this a couple years back with students because I'll go out for a full day and sometimes they'll invite me to stay for another day and I'll work with students one-on-one. We'll have these conversations. And it started to work just effectively with the students as it had whenever I was going through sales training. I'm like, oh my God. I was never taught to have these conversations in real time and practice them before I had them in front of my peers. And to my awareness, and correct me if I'm wrong here, to my awareness, I don't think anybody else is doing out there. And here's the difference. There's a lot of great people out there teaching leadership in the band space, and kudos to them. They're absolutely amazing. The difference when you work with me is that I'm going to teach some concepts. We're going to apply that in the moment, and the students are going to walk away motivated, yeah, but they're actually going to know how to use it because they will have done it. That's why I come out and do a full 8 hours. And if you'd like me to come work with your band, or if you want my help on any level, go to bandleadershipseminars.com, and there's tons of resources out there. But the point being is that I learned this it was very difficult. But when I got on the end of it, there was nothing I could handle it. And so I started testing that with students. And when they can go into their situations, able to handle themselves confidently, no matter what arises. And one thing I teach them is that anything you can say, you can ask. So be patient, ask questions, listen, and many times the situations will resolve themselves. We get in trouble as students, as student leaders, peer-to-peer. We even get in trouble peer-to-peer as adults. When we walk in there trying to control a situation, control a person, tell them what to do, and try to exercise authority or some sort of control. And unfortunately, as students, they don't have that prefrontal cortex, so they're making decisions and saying things that they're not even thinking about consequences. You know that better than I do, right? You see it every day. But my invitation to you is, number one, facilitate the conversation with your students about what they anticipate or what they've seen in the past that are difficult conversations that cause conflict or drama. Flip chart it out, put it on the board, and say, okay, guys, let's talk about how we should handle this. Let them self-discover. Invite them to role play, putting them in the less confrontational situation. Hey, you be the student who's going off, and I'll do my best as the band director to try to manage that conversation. So you put yourself on the line first. Show them it's okay. Nobody's going to die. It's not going to be a big challenge. And then put them in the other role and let them practice and praise and recognize the whole time and bring them through that process. Because just like as a band director in rehearsals, you will tell them, listen, guys, if you're going to mess up big so I can hear it and we can fix it. Make it okay for them to mess up in this role play situation as well. And start small, start slow, make sure they're cool, and then push a little bit more. Letting them know that, guys, the reason we're doing this is because it's going to be a little uncomfortable right now in front of your peers. It's going to feel awkward, but if we'll continue to push through this, you'll get stronger. And then by the time we step on the marching field for band camp and all the way through, whenever you guys face this with your peers, you'll know exactly what to say, exactly how to handle it. The drama will come down. The confrontation will be far less, and you guys will be far more effective, in your roles as student leaders. So I see some people coming in and out. If you have a question for me right now, please feel free to drop it there as I close this out. I'll stay as long as you want me to now that I see some people there. But even if you're watching this on the replay and you have any questions for me, please drop them. I'll circle back. I'll see them and I'll answer them for you. And if nothing else, I'll shoot another video for you. And for those of you who don't know me, again, 9-time student leader, 6-time drum major, which basically makes me a unicorn in the marching band. The students get a kick out of that. But and so I'm not a band director. So I'm not saying this is the only way to handle it. And I know you guys are in this every day. So if you have some experience, some wisdom, some knowledge that would help other band directors, please feel free to jump in there and make that suggestion, and run over to bandleadershipseminars.com for resources that I can help you with this summer as you train and develop your students. Just making sure I have all my notes covered here and say everything I was going to say to you. But I'm here to serve. I will give whatever wisdom and experience that I have, and anything that I can do to serve you guys throughout the year. Stay tuned. If you haven't liked this page, do it, because every time I go live, you're going to see it. Run over into my Band Leadership Inner Circle, request access there. I'm going to post that there, and you can ask questions of me there as well. And stay tuned, because I'm also going to post content for your students. I did a live earlier for students talking about integrity and character being something that you as band directors look for. And I've already seen band directors start to share it on their Facebook pages. Feel free to do that. And let me know what questions you need answered for your students, or what you want me to share with them. Because look, you're out there telling your students this, that, and the other. And when I come back and reinforce it, and you can just forward the message over to them, and I say what you've already said, even though we set it up, they still go, oh my God, that's amazing, because I'm a different person saying it. And I know you're sitting there banging your head up against the wall saying, oh my God, I tell them all the time. But it's that third person that comes in and reinforces what you're saying and what you want to know, and that's where these videos come from. So stay tuned. My commitment to myself and to you is to go live every single day answering questions and helping you guys out. So I've run my mouth here for a little bit, and I hope it served you. Run over to bandleadershipseminars.com, but also comments, share, like, give me a hearts up, because I want this message to spread. I want other band directors and band programs and band students to be able to benefit, right, from the collective knowledge and wisdom of the group. So until we talk next time, I hope that served. Bandleadershipseminars.com. Dwayne Huff, 9-time student leader, 6-time drum major, humbled and honored to serve you guys who are educators. I've never been there. I honor you for all you do, and my commitment to you is to make your programs better throughout the year. Leadership is not seasonal, and remind your students that they can inspire superior performance if they make the commitment and fully understand what leadership is, why it's important, and how they can serve your band program. So until we talk next time, have a great day. Hopefully, Derek, that this buffering thing will be resolved in the replay. So check that out. And hey, have a great evening, guys. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.